Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of James Jam. I'm Jam. This is my jam. And I know there's been a few other YouTubers who have been talking about kind of going on no buys or trying to buy less or kind of shopping their own closets. And I think I might fall into one of those categories in that when I buy, it kind of ebbs and flows with luxury items. At least, they're expensive.
Mostly flows.
I just like to get things that speak to me, and
maybe you should cover your ears more.
Stop it. And so luckily the name of my channel is James Jam, and it's not necessarily a luxury channel name, because when I first started this channel, and what I'd like to do is actually speak about other things that I like as well. And so today's going to be one of those days. There's a few things that I really enjoy doing outside of purchasing.
Buying luxury.
Right. And one of the big things is reading. And I had a lot of positive feedback about people wanting to know what I was reading, things about books. There's a lot of other readers out there, which is really exciting to me. So I thought that might be a good place to start. I've loved reading ever since I was young. When I was younger, my family didn't have a lot of money, but once a year where my mom worked would have a big book sale. And my mom was able to get a big bag of books, paper bag full of books for $2. And she would bring home, like a lot of little paper bags can fit in the big grocery bag. And that's generally how I got my books and or for Christmas presents as I became older and discovered Goodwills and thrift shops. I just bought more and more and more eBay, and I probably have about 2,000 to 3,000 books right now.
Closer to 3,000.
We have our house is very unique. The third floor is actually a bedroom. And so our bedroom's on the third floor, the master's on the second floor. And so the master bedroom on the second floor is my sewing room, scrapbook room, and my husband, for one of my birthday gifts one year, took the master closet and put shelves all over it, and all my books are in there. But I'm just going to talk more right now about what I've been reading, am reading, and I'll make one suggestion. If I had to pick my favorite author of all time, I thought I'd let you know about that. So I always read more than one book at a time. I generally have a book going around the house or two, and then I have books I read on my Kindle before I go to bed at night. And so I recently finished Waylon by Waylon Jennings. And I also finished Friends, Lovers, and the Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. Both were really good books. Really interesting to read Matthew Perry's after he passed away. Definitely, I know he didn't think that's where his life was going. In fact, I think he thought it was going to go in the opposite way. So I would say that was a good read. I really like reading about Waylon Jennings. I don't know what made me pick that up other than I like the Dukes of Hazzard singing their song, and I love country music. But that was interesting as well. I guess I had not known his background with Buddy Holly.
Was he the narrator too?
Yeah. Yeah, what do they call not the bandolier. that's not what's on that's my purse, but something O'Lear is what the technical term was. But that was a really good book too. Interesting to learn about him and again his relationship with Buddy Holly. I like reading different books about Elvis. But some of the actual paper books I've been reading is I just finished.
Aren't all books paper?
Well, no, they're on my Kindles.
Oh, okay.
So I just finished this. It's the first book I ever read by Donna Everhart. It's When the Jessamine Grows. This just came out. In fact, it says that the publishing date is February of 2024, and I bought it in January. So
you went to the future.
Right, and I read this book. It's set in North Carolina, doing a little bit of looking, and it looks like a lot of her books are set in North Carolina, or a southern state. This one's really interesting. It speaks to the yeoman farmers that were farming during the Civil War, and they were basically farmers that didn't take a side. They did not own slaves, and they just basically lived on a homestead, and they had just enough to feed their own family, and they just made a living to live on their land, and weren't northern or southern sympathizers. But it kind of speaks to what happened in the South if you weren't a southern sympathizer. But it goes in much more detail than that. The ending was different than any kind of book I think I've ever read before. And I would highly recommend it. I don't want to say any more than that because I would not want to ruin it, but definitely a good book by her. The one that I'm reading right now, currently mainly reading, is this To Swoon and Spar by Martha Waters, and this is set in the 1800s, and it's about a viscount who marries the ward of his uncle in order to purchase his ancestral estate, which had been sold to the uncle when his father died. It's actually really good. I'm about halfway through it. It's kind of there's some humor there, and it's a light, easy read. I'm also reading the Carol Burnett book, where I can't think of the name right now, where she just tells little anecdotes of her what's happened in her life. It's not her biography or anything. It's just little bits and blurbs about some pieces of things that happened to her, which is really good. And there's a Debbie McComber book I'm reading too. It's in her Dakota series. It's the second book in that series, which is really good. Those books I forgot to bring up here.
Is that south or north?
I think it's north. Another book I'm reading, which is fiction and nonfiction and pretty heavy reading for me, is this. It's called The Beak of the Finch. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning book, and it was written quite a while ago by Jonathan Weiner, and it is a really interesting book about these scientists go to the Galapagos Islands, and there's an island there that's totally separated from any other islands or anything else, and they've been able to watch the evolution of the finches on the island go through full life cycles in a way that's never been done before, to kind of speak to how natural selection works and how the beaks of the finches have changed, and how the ones that have beaks that work better for gathering like figs and like little nuts and stuff, they tend to survive. And so they've watched the whole group of finch there actually change over their lifespans, which has never been done before. So that's pretty interesting, but pretty heavy reading. A lot of it there's other words I have to look up when I'm reading some of it. So that one I usually read a few pages at a time, and then I set it down. Another book I started reading here was Neon Gods by Kate Robert. This is kind of like a new take on different fictional Greek gods, like Persephone, Hades, Hermes, all them. They each have little stories because it's a series, so not quite halfway through this one. And then there's also Radiant Sin, which I'll be reading, Wicked Beauty, which I'll be reading, and The Electric Idol, which I'll be reading. I started reading this one, liked it, so I automatically bought the other three because that's just what I do. If I see something I like, I usually buy more than one. I purchased this book recently at Barnes & Noble, One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. She also had, it does have a second book now called the Two Twisted Crowns. And I have not read it yet, but I was looking at it. It kind of caught my attention. And an employee at the store came by, and she's like, oh my gosh, everybody buys that book. And she was pointing to the second book in this series. And I said, oh, have you read it? And she said no, but she said tons of people have. They think it's super good. And so they recommend it to people. And then I went to the checkout, and the girl at the checkout had read it and said, "Oh my gosh, that's such a good book. You're going to love it." And it's about someone named Elspeth, and it's her adventures. It says, Elspeth Spindle needs more than luck to stay safe in the eerie, mist-locked kingdom of Blunder. She needs a monster. She calls him the Nightmare, an ancient mercurial spirit trapped in her head. He protects her, he keeps her secret, but nothing comes free, especially magic. And I just thought it looked interesting. So, and with all those people saying how good it was, I picked it up but have not started it as of yet. I did pick up another book also by Donna Everhart, the one who wrote the one that I first showed, When the Jessamine Grows. And this is an earlier book of hers called The Moonshiners Daughter. And this one is also set in North Carolina in 1960. So I love Tennessee and the Smoky Mountains. Smoky Mountains are also in North Carolina. And so a lot of times when I see books from those places, I pick them up. So I picked that up. Another book I have set to read, Star Trek Vulcans Glory. It is supposed to be the first book that shows, or that speaks to Spock and, what does it say here? Spock's first mission aboard the Enterprise, and it looks like it's when the other Captain Pike was still there.
Correct.
So I have not yet read this, but I have a really good friend, Zane, and it reads like crazy, and we lunch together sometimes. I work with him, and he'll always tell me his books. Last year he read over 100 books. This year I'm sure he's on par to read that many for sure. And he got me into Star Trek and then talked about the books, and I love having lunch with him because by the time I have lunch with him, even if it's once a week, he's probably read like 2 to 5 books since I seen him the last time. So he's one of the big reasons that I've been just kind of really getting back in to my reading more. So I look forward to reading about Spock's first mission. Then I picked this up at Goodwill. Well, actually, I saw this book first at Goodwill, Bloomsberry Girls, a novel. And that looked really interesting. I read the back and everything. And green tags were 50% off. So $6.99 was half off. And I thought it looked good. It says, in London, still reeling from the ravages of World War II and the changes war has brought to English society, 3 young women take their futures into their own hands. And I thought that looked interesting. And then it said on here, best-selling author, the Jane Austen Society. And what book was right next to it in there but the Jane Austen Society, again, with 50% off. And love these because they look like new. I just thought they looked really interesting. This one speaks to being in the in the early 1800s. Chawton was the final home of Jane Austen, one of England's finest novelists. By the 1940s, little remains of her legacy, but a few distant relatives and their diminishing estate, including the cottage where Austen wrote or revised her famous books. With the winds of change blowing through the country in the post-war days and the cottage's future now in the hands of fate, a group of desperate individuals fights to preserve, that seems wrong, both of Austen's home and her legacy for the world. So I got these 2 to read. I'm looking forward to reading them as well. And the last book I picked up at Goodwill, because it was 79 cents, was The Big Bam, The Life and Times of Babe Ruth. And I just thought that looked really interesting. I really don't know much about him. I do enjoy baseball, and they even got cool pictures. And actually, my husband just picked up a book, The Camera Person, about, it is the story of a ball player's son. And I know right now, I believe it's like on the best-selling list for nonfiction. And it looked really interesting to me, and I might pick it up and read it when he's done. So I thought that this looked interesting too, and for 79 cents, I picked it up. So that is what I'm going to be reading lately. The other thing I was going to tell you is, of my favorite author of all time is Maud Hart Lovelace. And I am always reading one of her books. There's always one on my Kindle. And She is a phenomenal author. My favorite of hers is she did a series of books on someone named Betsy. Betsy is basically Maud, and it speaks to, she had two main best friends. There's Tacy and Tib, so it's Betsy, Tacy, and Tib. And Betsy's story starts when she's 4 years old, turning 5, and it goes all the way through her wedding. And there is 8 main books in this, 10 main books in the series, and then there's 3 side novels, and they're all set in what's called Deep Valley, but it's really Mankato, Minnesota. And so almost every character in the book is a real life person. And it starts, Betsy was born in the 1800s, late 1800s. And they're just incredible books. The younger ones, when she's younger, are more for a younger audience, but they're still funny to read. For example, her and her friends decide they're going to cook one day, and they go into the kitchen and make everything pudding. And they figure putting everything in the kitchen together in a pan and cooking it is probably going to be delicious. Yeah, it's not. And it just you kind of watch them grow, and it's just phenomenal. Talks about clothing at the time and just a lot of really neat items. Goes through her high school years, and then she goes out into the great world. So she takes a trip over Europe just before the war starts. And if you have never read a book by her, I would highly recommend her Betsy Tacy series, starting with Betsy Tacy and then going on from there. Phenomenal books. This is the last book in the series. Well, at least her last book. Like I said, there's 3 other ones that take place with friends of hers, outside kind of characters. But that is what I have for you today. That is what I've been reading. This is my jam. What have you been reading? What do you recommend? Would you like to see what the cameraman's been reading? Because I bet you I can have him do a video. He does a lot of reading as well, and reads different things than I do generally. If you could leave a comment down in the comments below, I absolutely love that. Love interacting with everybody. Helps me get to know everybody just a little bit better. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I would say I'm primarily a luxury channel, but I also speak to contemporary bags, things like that. Now I've brought up books. I kind of let you know what I get and what I've been liking lately. And some of my quilting might fall over into some of this as well at times. We'll see. That remains to be seen. You can find me over on Instagram as well. I'm James Jam there too. It's JAME_S_Jam. And I put out videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I think that's everything I typically say. So I would say until next time, please do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
I can't believe you didn't tell them the naughty things you do with each book.
What?
Reading ahead.
I don't do that on every
book.
I do not.
Every book.
I do not.
Spoiler.
No, I don't.
Spoiler.
No, but it's really hard for me not to.
That's why she does it on every book.
I do not.